Imagine you are sitting in a classroom, the fluorescent lights are humming, the air smells like old paper and cheap coffee. On the chalkboard, your professor writes 2 words in giant block letters, double coincidence. They tell you a story. It is a story about a man with a pile of potatoes who desperately needs a new pair of shoes. He walks into town, dragging his sack of potatoes, looking for a shoemaker. But there is a problem. The shoemaker does not want potatoes. The shoemaker wants a new hammer. So our potato man has to find a blacksmith who wants potatoes trade for a hammer, then go back to the shoemaker to get his shoes. It sounds exhausting. It sounds inefficient. It sounds like a total nightmare. The professor smiles and says, "This is why we invented money. Because barter was too hard, humans created coins to make life easier. It is the foundation of modern civilization. It is in every textbook from St. Louis to Singapore. It is logical, it is elegant, and it is a total, absolute lie. If you have ever taken Economics 101, you have been lied to. Not just a little white lie, but a foundational myth that has shaped how you view work, debt, and your fellow human beings for the last 250 years. Today, we are going to tear down the classroom walls. We are going to travel from the dusty libraries of Cambridge to the ancient temples of Mesopotamia. We are going to find out why the smartest people in the world have been repeating a fairy tale that has zero evidence in reality. Welcome to the mystery of the missing barter economy. Let us start with the culprit. The man who started it all was Adam Smith. In 1776, he wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. It is basically the Bible of capitalism. Smith needed to explain how markets work, so he imagined a primitive world. He told his readers to picture a village of hunters and gatherers. In Smith's mind, these people were constantly trading deer for beaver pelts or corn for arrowheads. He called this the propensity to truck, barter, and exchange. He argued that because this bartering was so annoying, people eventually agreed on a medium of exchange, like silver or gold. From there, we got banks, and from banks, we got credit cards and digital apps. It is a perfect straight line of progress. It makes sense to our modern brains. We love a good origin story. But there was one tiny problem that Adam Smith forgot to check. He never actually talked to an anthropologist. Fast forward to the year 1981. Enter Caro, line hum free, an anthropologist at the University of Cambridge. She is a legend in her field. She decided to do something no economist had bothered to do for 2 centuries. She went looking for this mythical barter village. She looked through every record of every culture ever studied. She looked at the First Nations in North America. She looked at the tribes in the Amazon. She looked at the ancient civilizations of Africa and the Pacific Islands. Her conclusion was chilling for the economics department. She wrote, and I quote, "No example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence from it of money. All available ethnography suggests that there has never been such a thing." Pause for a second and let that sink in. The fundamental story of our global financial system is based on a society that has never existed. If you look at any real primitive society, they did not barter with each other. If you lived in a village of 50 people 5,000 years ago, and you had extra potatoes, you did not stand there and negotiate a price with your neighbor for his shoes. That would be incredibly weird. It would be like going to your mom's house for dinner and trying to pay her $20 for the roast chicken. It is socially awkward and frankly a bit insulting. So if they were not bartering, what were they doing? They were using something much more powerful and much more human. They were using credit. But not the kind of credit you get from a bank. It was social credit. If I am a hunter and I bring back a massive elk, I do not hide it in my tent and wait for someone to offer me a spear tip for a steak. I give the meat away. I give it to my friends, my family, and my neighbors. Why? Because I know that when I am sick or when the hunt is bad next month, someone else is going to give me meat. Everyone is keeping a mental tally of who is a good person and who is a jerk. If you take and take but never give back, the village stops helping you. You do not need a coin to tell you that. You just need a memory. The late anthropologist David Gray Burr, in his masterpiece called Debt, the first 5,000 years, explained that money did not come from a bunch of villagers trying to swap vegetables. It actually came from the state and the military. Think about it. If you are a king, and you have an army of 50,000 soldiers, how do you feed them? You cannot just carry 50,000 tons of grain around the desert. So you invent a coin. You give these coins to your soldiers as pay. Then you tell every citizen in your kingdom that they have to pay you a tax, and you will only accept that specific coin as payment. Now, suddenly, every farmer needs those coins to avoid going to jail. The farmer now has an incentive to sell his grain to the soldiers to get the coins. The market is born. not out of a natural desire to swap things, but at the point of a sword. It is a much darker and much more interesting story than the one in your textbook. But wait, you might say, I have seen barter happen. What about people trading cigarettes in prison movies? Or people in countries with hyperinflation, like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, trading eggs for gasoline? You're absolutely right. Barter does exist. But here is the kicker, and this is where it gets really funny. Barter is not the ancestor of money. Barter is the ghost of money. Barter only shows up after a currency has collapsed, or when people are forced together who do not trust each other and have no way to use coins. In a prison, you trade cigarettes, because you cannot use dollars and you definitely do not trust the guy in the next cell enough to give him credit. Barter is what happens when the system breaks. It is a sign of a society in crisis, not a society being born. So why do we keep telling the lie? Why do textbooks continue to print the story of the potato man and the shoemaker? Because the lie is useful. If we believe that money emerged naturally from trade, then we believe that the market is a natural force of nature, like gravity or the weather. It makes it seem like the government and our social bonds are secondary to the cold, hard logic of the transaction. It turns us into calculating machines. It justifies the idea that everything has a price tag. But when you realize that credit and debt came first, everything changes. It means that at our core, we are not just traders. We are social beings who are constantly in debt to one another. And I do not mean financial debt. I mean the debt of being alive. You owe the people who raised you. You owe the people who built the roads you drive on. You owe the person who held the door open for you this morning. This is the real human economy. It is messy, it is emotional, and it is built on trust, not on the double coincidence of wants. Let us look at a real-world example that feels like a fantasy. Consider the island of Yap in the Pacific. For a long time, economists were obsessed with them because they used giant stone discs called rye stones as money. Some of these stones were massive, way too heavy to move. When a trade happened, they did not move the stone. They just agreed that the stone now belonged to someone else. There is even a story about a stone that fell off a boat and sank to the bottom of the ocean. The islanders decided that it was still there, so it still counted as money. Everyone laughed at how primitive this was. But wait a minute. Is that not exactly how our modern banking works? When you send $1,000 to a friend on an app, no physical gold moves, no paper cash moves. It is just a bunch of people agreeing that a number has changed. We are still the villagers of Yap. We are still the hunters sharing the elk. We have just added a lot of complicated math and shiny screens on top of it. The danger of the barter myth is that it makes us forget that money is just a social contract. It is a promise. And when we forget that, we start to value the numbers more than the people behind them. We start to think that if someone cannot pay their debt, they are a failure of nature. But in the old system, the credit system, debt was just a way to keep the conversation going. If I owe you, we are connected. If the debt is settled perfectly, we have no reason to talk anymore. So, the next time you look at a $20 bill or look at your bank balance on your phone, remember the potato man who never was. Remember that the economy is not a machine that evolved from swapping furs. It is a giant, global web of promises. We have been told a fairy tale for 200 years to make us feel like we are part of a logical, mechanical system. But the truth is much more chaotic and much more beautiful. We are a species that survives because we help each other without needing an immediate reward. We are a species that invented money not because we were greedy, but because we needed a way to extend our trust to strangers. The lie of economics. 101 is that it tries to take the humanity out of the human economy. It tries to turn your neighbors into competitors. But anthropology tells us a different story. It tells us that before there were markets, there were gifts. Before there were coins, there were community bonds. And before there was the individual, there was the tribe. So here is my challenge to you. For the next 24 hours, try to see the hidden credit system in your life. Don't worry about the dollars for a second. Look at the coffee your friend bought you because you were feeling down. Look at the colleague who covered your shift. Look at the person who gave you directions when you were lost. That is the real economy. That is the one that has existed for 50,000 years. It doesn't need a textbook, and it doesn't need a double coincidence. It just needs you to remember that we all owe each other something. If you found this deep dive into the secrets of history interesting, hit that subscribe button. We are going to keep questioning everything they taught you in school, because the world is a lot stranger than the people in suits want you to believe. Until next time, keep your potatoes, and maybe just give your neighbor a pair of shoes if they need them. They will probably get you back eventually. Or maybe they won't. And maybe, just maybe, that is okay too. This is the truth behind the biggest lie in economics. Thanks for watching. Good luck out there in the real world.